Welcome back to the FloTrack podcast. FloTrack podcast at gmail.com. You can find the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, and wherever else you listen. Gordon, according to email inbox, we're big in Qatar. I got an email about that yesterday. It says, this is a very serious email and a very real email. Subject line, the FloTrack podcast is ranking very well in Qatar. So there we go.
Who do you think is Samba? Who's doing it? Who's doing the listening?
Definitely. Samba, Barshim, all the friends that Lincoln and I met last year in the country of Qatar. No, I'm guessing this is a form email and they just changed the country based on which podcast producers they're sending it to. You had a late night last night. Are you ready to do the show?
Did.
I know you were up. You were all on Sixers Reddit last night, I'm assuming.
Yes. So for those who don't know, the NBA draft was last night, and there was a bunch of wheeling dealing by my team, the Sixers. But here's the thing: the draft ended, right? And then there was a press conference that I watched at midnight. So it was at 1:00 in Philadelphia, but I watched a press conference at midnight because I'm crazy. And then after the press conference, I waited for a podcast that I like listening to called The Rights to Ricky Sanchez, which is a podcast about Sixers processing. And they recorded it, and it didn't go up till 1 a.m. So then it's an hour-long podcast. So, of course, I had to listen to that content right away. I couldn't wait till tomorrow. So I didn't finish that podcast till a little after 2. And then I went to bed. So
wow.
That's a very common thing, though. I have a weird situation where I go down crazy wormhole tunnels late at night where I'm just like, oh, yeah, I'll start a podcast at midnight or like midnight 30, and it's like a 3-hour podcast. I'm like, why did I do that?
So, well, listen, I'm just surprised you watched a press conference because you've been to enough track and field press conferences to know the value of a press conference.
Yeah, well, it was kind of fun. I'm not going to lie. So, an NBA press conference, right? You feel like that's like the big dogs, right? I feel like I've been to, I think the most like nervous press conference I ever went to was in London, I think, when Usain Bolt was one of the main, people that were being interviewed, and it was big. It's London media, so there's like so many people there. It's not like a small meet that you could just ask all the questions. So it's like one of my first 1 or 2 years at Flow. I'm sitting there and I'm like, I gotta ask Usain Bolt a question, but like I kind of felt intimidated because I was like, ooh, people have these loud cameras that go flash, flash, and all these reporters with their notepads, and they look like they're very important. But I was like, I have to ask Usain Bolt a question. I forget the question I asked, but I remember being super nervous about asking it because I was like, am I allowed to? Like, I know I'm here. I know I'm media, but like, are they going to let me ask Usain Bolt a question? You have like this like self like doubt. And there was a kid who clearly I don't think was part of the establishment Philadelphia media outlets because he went last and he had like a very young voice. And you could tell that like he was like, this is my big break. I get to ask Daryl Morey a question. And he asked him a legitimate question. So I kind of, it reminded me of myself in being like year 1 or 2 at FloTrack when I was traveling Europe, being at these big Diamond League events and feeling like, oh, do I belong here? And in the end, you do. I mean, just because they're 35 and not 25 or 45 and not 25 doesn't mean they don't have that you don't have any better questions. So yeah, that's how I try to tie this whole thing to track and field, is thinking about this NBA press conference that I watched at midnight and comparing it to when I went to the London Diamond League. So
did Bolt think Ches got robbed for the Bowerman too when you asked him?
Oh, yeah, he probably did. No, I did ask him. So this wasn't at the press conference, but this was at the mix zone. And when you're in the mix zone at London, it is crazy, especially for Bolt, because like everyone and their mom is there. And you know he doesn't have much time because he has to stop multiple times. And what is Usain Bolt going to say in year 12 of his career after a random Diamond League event, right? He said everything. What new question can you ask? And I was like, screw it. I'm not going to ask him how his race was or how you prepping for Worlds. I'm going to ask a stupid ass question. And I told the people around me, hey, I'm going to ask a really stupid question. And they're like, all right. And so I did. And I asked Usain Bolt, do you play Pokemon Go? And he looked at me like, what? And he's like, nah, and walked away. And then that was the headline. Usain Bolt does not play Pokemon Go. Because I don't know if you know this, but during the summer of 2015,
oh man, it was wild.
It was everywhere.
It was everywhere.
So
yeah.
I had asked Usain Bolt if he plays Pokemon Go, and he did not. Gave me a good facial reaction. So
yeah. So no, you bring up a good point. I never covered a meet with Bolt. So obviously he's at an order of magnitude so much bigger than everybody else. But it is funny when you go to like an Olympic trials or a high level meet, right? Where there is somebody who is a star and there's all this jockeying to try to get in position to talk to them. And you've probably heard it. Sometimes people get a little chippy when people swing a camera around and almost hit somebody. People start yelling. But when you realize the person's not going to stay for very long, there's no incentive to follow the rules of like, oh, let's let this first person ask or the person closest to them ask the question. So it just devolves into random shouting. And then it also devolves into who can yell the question like the soonest from when the person turns the corner and who can come up with like the shortest question. So I remember one time it was like with Gatlin one year at the Olympic trials, it was just like people would yell, "What's your message to Usain?" It's like that was it. That was the question because they were just trying to get some sort of like 2-second reaction from Gatlin or somebody. It's like, well, that's not a like that. What he just ran a semifinal or something or a quarterfinal. There's no new message to Usain Bolt after the second. But the level of questioning just like drops like the higher profile the athlete gets. It's an interesting phenomenon that I discovered.
There's like a couple other elements to the mix zone that's kind of funny. You have the one person in the mix zone who everyone's like, he or she doesn't know that they just ask really bad questions, and everyone is kind of like dreading that they get time because they know they ask like a long-winded question that really doesn't matter, and you know they're just eating up seconds of the whole because everyone's like, damn it, like man, like you're just chewing up the clock. But I do know one of our former colleagues, James Cameron. We loved him in the press conference in the mix zones because he kind of was very like did not care. And I remember there's 2 moments when he asked the same question and it became a meme internally between the staff where he would just ask the question, "How was your race?" Because it's such like a basic question and like very like like and it's very like basic question, right? That's like kind of asked every time. It kind of becomes old news because everyone asks, "How was your race?" Right? And so I think Galen Rupp came into the mix zone, and it had just been during like the whole Salazar report coming out and all this stuff.
Yeah.
So like everyone had like legitimate like non-race questions. No one cared about his race. Like everyone cared about him to comment on the news. And James is the first person to get in there, and he just goes, "How was your race?" And everyone was just like, it was just like Galen's eyes like lit up because he's like, "Oh shit, this is awesome! I get to tell people how my race was, and then I get to kill like 45 seconds of the time." And then there was another time where he's joking, but he's also just like, yeah, he's joking, but it also you get an answer out of it. It's like a joke that kind of plays both sides of the coin. And then there's another one when Yomif Kajelcha, who speaks no English, especially early on.
Yeah.
He came. This is when he had a big breakout at Pre. He comes in and he doesn't know English, and he's
I
going
was
through
there
this
for this.
Yeah,
I was there for
and
this.
I
This
think
like 2014.
Yeah, and I think James goes, "How was your race?" And he's just like, it was like awkward silence. He doesn't even answer the question. I don't know. We love James Cameron to death, and whenever we love putting him in mix zones because he would he would just turn them into like entertainment, especially within the media. For us, we're like, this is fun because when you ask the same athletes the same questions over and over for multiple years, eventually you start turning it into a game to entertain yourself at least.
Well, this past summer, after the Salazar news happened, midway through the World Championships, that was the main question that everybody had for pretty much every distance athlete, because especially American based, because either they were part of the group, they used to be part of the group, or they were competing against the group. But nobody wanted, and I don't blame them because I didn't do this either. I don't want to hit them with that first question after a race to be, I want to give them some like a warm up basically, so that way we can get the best answer. But it was always this weird thing of how many non-Salazar questions are we going to do before someone jumps into the pool and then eventually does it. And then there would be a pivot. And then once there's a pivot, you can't go back to that. You can't go back to how was your race when you're talking about a coach being banned from the sport. It's going to go down that direction, and that's going to run out the clock. So everybody was like tiptoeing and trying to figure out when the proper time was to throw it in there. I was watching, to take this back to the NBA draft, because that's what the main focus of how we started the show.
NBA week on FloTrack. NBA week.
I thought the questions last night to the families or to the players would have been better directed to the parents. Did you feel that way too? Because the parents are the one, they have this interesting story of they worked 2 jobs and helped get them to this point, or they were a former NBA player. The kids are mostly just sobbing and sort of in shock that they've realized their dream. And the questions they would get would be like, what are the Knicks getting with your skill set? It's like, and he's crying. I don't know. Like, he's not going to talk about his outside game right now. It's like, well, it's more of an emotional feel good thing than sell yourself. I thought the parents or the brother, the sister or something would have more to say.
Yeah. I feel like it's a lose-lose situation for post-draft interviews. Like you're trying to get something,
like
but they're not.
Too.
Yeah. You have 10 seconds. So it doesn't. Back to one last thing about interviews. You talk about how, like in Qatar, you'd wait to talk about the Salazar news, and then once you're in that world, you can't go back to like talk about the tactics of who's not really doesn't really know track, and it isn't really on the beat.
Go back to the beginning. Go back a second. I think we lost you there. I want to hear the whole story.
Yeah. So you mentioned how in Doha, when you're trying to get the Salazar questions in, once you start asking the athletes about Salazar, you can't go back to just asking about the race, right? And so once you go, you're in it, right? But I do remember in certain mix zones where there's that one reporter who only really cares about asking about like the city, like what's it like to be in the city of Albuquerque or whatever. And like, so we could be in the middle of asking like a legitimate question to one of the top athletes about a serious issue, and then in the middle of it, it's like, hey, so what's your favorite restaurant in Albuquerque? And we're like, God damn it, like, dude, we're in the middle of like finding out something serious about an injury or serious about some tactic, and you're just like, hey, do you, what hotel are you staying in? And we're like, okay.
Well, we let this guy well, there's also the people who are from prestige outlets, big time papers, who are writing a story on some larger, much larger thing. Maybe it's about shoes, maybe it's about the bidding of the games or something like that, or it's some very interesting thing, but it's very specific, and they're asking every single athlete that same question. Those also jump in there and disrupt the flow a bit too. The other thing I remembered from Doha too, what people would try to do, some people would come in and be like, all right, I'm not answering any questions about X. So then it just becomes a challenge to figure out how you ask about X. And then with one athlete in particular, I remember they said they weren't going to talk about it. And then 4 or 5 questions later, it was almost like we pretended that the person didn't say that. And then they jumped right back in with questions about it. And they ended up answering them. So never hurts to ask. They can always say no.
Never hurts.
I guess that was the moral of the story. Yeah.
The question that this new kid asked in the press conference at 12:30 at night, he did ask, now that the Sixers got rid of Al Horford, and they were all about trying to protect Joel Embiid by signing 30 power forwards, and centers. Now they're going to the other route with like, hey, let's get shooters. Maybe that will work, which it will.
Yeah.
He asked, who's gonna play behind Joel Embiid, and he had it was a good question. Like, yeah, who will play behind Joel Embiid now they got rid of Al Horford? I don't know. I
Right.
know most people don't care about the minutia of the 76ers 2021 roster, but hey,
Yeah.
it kept me up till 2:30 last night. I'm on cloud nine. I'm excited for basketball, man. December 22nd. Can't get here soon enough. The low that I was in with getting swept by Boston is now completely gone. I'm back on a high. Back on the high. So.
Okay. Well, so the theme for today's show is 4 events in track and field that will happen before the NBA season starts. So we're going to talk about these 4 events
There we go.
that are coming
This will
up.
keep me going.
We will do them in chronological order. We'll start first with an event that's coming up this Monday. You can watch it live on FloTrack. The Updog 10 miler Gordon, where Keira D'Amato is going to be going for the women's only 10-mile record, which is 52:12. We talked about her earlier in the week, how she's had just this fantastic 2020, has put up scintillating times all across the board, got some victories over big names. She's going to be racing against Molly Seidel, among others, in this race. What do you think of her chances of running 52:12 or better?
I have no idea. I do not know the minutia of 10-mile records. I don't know how to project what a good 10-miler is. You know, my brain really only thinks 5K, 10K, half marathon, marathon increments. So to ask me for a 10-mile increment, I really have no idea. Like, I'm assuming the record's soft because it's an event that's run very rarely, and it's a record that has to also be a women's only run race, which also happens even more rare. So I think she'll get it, but I also could be completely wrong. I don't know. What is a 52:12? Like, is that good? I don't know.
Yes.
But there's
Well,
a lot of records out there that are records, but they're also kind of just like weak ass records. So is this a weak ass one, or is this a legit like one like the 10K or 5K on the women's side?
let me break it down for you this way, Gordon. She ran 68:57 this year in the half marathon. That's 5:15 pace. 52:12 is 5:13 pace. So she only needs to run 2 seconds faster per mile for 3.1 fewer miles. So,
yeah. So she's going to do it.
Yeah. So 50-50. Kara Goucher has run 50-59 en route. So on a longer race, she went through 10 miles in 50-59, which would be a minute and 13 seconds faster than this. I looked up Molly Huddle's best time. It's a 51:44. So I'm assuming that was done in a mixed gender race here. So 52:12
so there's all these
is doable.
So wait. There's all of these women who are American who have run faster than 52:12, yet this is a record attempt. That's how stupid our sport is. I'm sorry. But like it's not a record. If you just could list off the top of your head, oh yeah, Kara Goucher's run faster, Molly Seidel's run faster. She's in this race.
Molly Huddle.
But she's run
Huddle.
fast. Oh, Molly Huddle has run faster. But like, so then how is this a record attempt? And that just shows the stupidness of
women's only. Women's only. Women's only. You got to remember that. Okay, look it. Think of it this way. I'm gonna sell you on this event. It's just another chance to see Keira D'Amato run, to see how good she is this year, and to talk about her as a potential Olympian next year. 10 miles should be in her sweet spot based on what she's done in the half, based on what she's run in the 5K this year. I want to see how long she can keep this going. This has been a dream season for her. Now, it's a weird year to have a dream season, but if she keeps going like this, she's going to lock it in, and it's going to become a trend here. Her confidence has to be at an all-time high because she's just hitting fast time after fast time, and she's running with and beating people who have impressive credentials. So I think she's going to break this mark, 52:12. I think she's going to go under 52 minutes, and you can talk about how it's not as impressive as some of the other women who have covered 10 miles faster because that was in a co-ed race and not a single gender race. But just add this to the long list of Keira D'Amato's 2020 accomplishments. And if it's the last thing she does in the year, she's going to enter 2021 in such a remarkable position to potentially get a good get a spot in the Olympic team in the 10,000. So
I just don't
that's
understand
what I
how
think.
we need to separate records if it's not if it's a co-ed race versus single gender race. Yet
Mm-hmm.
we just went this entire year celebrating records that had
Mm-hmm.
robot human combined race, aka wavelight technology. Like
Mm-hmm.
we're like it's okay to have a light pace you for the entire race, but if someone who happens to not to be your gender happens to be in your race, like it doesn't count. It's stupid. It makes no sense.
Okay. All right. So I'm not selling you on that one on the 4 races before the NBA season starts. So I'll go to the next one. The next one is
I
going to
don't
be
one last thing though. Why is it called the up dog 10 miler? What
you
the
never
hell's an up
you never
dog?
seen The Office?
Is that what's up dog? That's basically what it.
Yeah.
Are they trying to get us
Yeah.
to walk into the joke of what's up dog and then be like, hey,
Yeah.
it's a 10 miler? I don't know.
She picked the name. Apparently she likes puns. So
Okay.
if you're going for the record, you get to pick the name of the race in the year 2020. That's the rule, I guess. Okay. Let's move forward. December 4th and 5th. Now this is another meet that has an interesting name. It's called the track meet, and it's taking place in California. 5Ks and 10Ks aplenty here. Now your eyes are probably on the second fastest heat of the men's 5K because that features Nico Young, who you apparently think is worth trading a ham sandwich for in your trade the discussion yesterday with Lincoln, which both of you guys somehow simultaneously undersold Nico Young and Connor Mance at the same time. But anyway, I'll leave that to yesterday's episode.
Hey,
I
come
like that
on.
you
All trades, you never get full value for a trade, right?
are fine.
That's how it works. You got rid of Kawhi Leonard and you got DeMar DeRozan. It's not a fair trade, but
Okay.
that's just what it is.
First of all, too soon. I don't appreciate that. Second of all, you're like Nico Young for some guy I never heard of and another guy who got like ninth like a couple years ago. No, Mance for Young. That's it. That's the trade. If you're Mike Smith, you don't take anything less than Connor Mance. That's it.
If
And I think
I'm
vice
BYU, I
versa.
make that trade in a heartbeat. You just
Yeah.
basically
Well,
extend Connor Mance's career by 4 more years. So, like, yeah,
yeah.
do it.
But yeah. Anyway, okay. So the let me run through some of these names though, and you can tell me if the Nico race is the one you're most looking forward to, or if it's something else. So in the men's 10,000, you have Edward Cheserek, you have Leonard Career, you have Pat Tiernan, you have Hassan Mead, you have Ben True, you have Tyler Day. The list goes on and on. Eric Jenkins is in there as well. Morgan McDonald. The women's 10K is solid too. You have, let's see, well, you have Keira D'Amato who's in there, so I guess she's not ending her season with the Updog 10 miler. You have Natasha Rogers, Alicia Monson, and Aurora, who just signed with BAA. Laura Thweet, Kellen Taylor, Steph Bruce, Wayne Kaladi. I mean, this is a stacked race. And the 5K, Drew Hunter and Sam Parsons are in there, along with Luis Grijalva and Ben Blankenship in the fast heat. And then the women's fast heat of the 5,000 has Kim Conley, Stephanie Garcia. Oh, Alicia Monson has entered there as well too. Maybe she's going to do the 1 day double. Okay, so that's a lot. That's a lot of names, and it's almost overflow because 2020 we can't process that deep of a race. So, what are you thinking about this meet?
I think the
Who are
men's
you looking forward to seeing?
10K, I think is the most interesting race because if you look at that field, that is basically the Olympic trials field minus Shadrach and Lopez. Like, I don't think there's anyone else
Mm.
who is a good contender who is not in that field outside of those two guys, right? I mean, because you
Yeah,
have Career, True, Mead, Day, all the people, right? So I think that race is going to be a great kind of what's it called? Like what's uh test, not
appetizer,
test. No, I forget the word. It's
run
all right.
through.
No,
Prelude.
It's a litmus test, maybe litmus.
Litmus test.
I don't know. Yeah, maybe. But basically, whoever wins that race is going to be favored to be third at the trials, which I think would be kind of interesting because basically the order of that finish is how we're probably going to project the order of trials. Again, obviously, it's not going to be one for one exact same order, but I do think the hierarchy that come out of this race will look at these are the main, like whoever finishes top 4 in this race will be like, those are the 4 plus Lopez plus Shadrack. Those are the 6 who are competing for the final 3 spots. That's what I think.
Well, there's not a lot of 10Ks, so I think you're right. We're going to put more weight onto this one than we normally would. Did I mention Sam Chalanka is in there as well too? There's a lot of international athletes in here as well. So if you're looking at it from that perspective, Morgan McDonald, is he thinking of dipping his toe in the 10K long term? I'm interested to see that question. Jenkins for the US, is Jenkins a future 10,000 meter guy? Or is he just going to try to double his chances basically to make the team?
Yeah, I think every 5,000 meter guy is a 10,000 meter guy on Olympic years, right? They all just try to double their chances. So,
okay. Do you want to talk about Nico Young in the second fastest heat, the sub 13:30 heat, a time that I said he could hit this year, and you laughed at me like last week. So, joke's on you, Gordon. Because everybody knows if you're in that heat, you run that time. There's never been anybody who doesn't run the time.
I mean, I'm excited, right? Will be interesting to see if he does indeed flirt with that U.S. junior record, which what we figured out was 13:28, right?
I thought you said 26, but you could be 26. Right.
Just under 13:30. With the pace of 13:30, you assume that he's probably going for it. He wouldn't, if he was trying to run 13:45, he probably wouldn't be in this race. He's trying to be up there and try to run a quick time. Yeah, I think in general for NAU, they're trying to have 2 great performances. I think Luis Grijalva is trying to go for maybe the NCAA record because he's in a 13:15 race, and then Nico Young trying to go for the U.S. junior record. So I think maybe this was the carrot that Mike Smith gave his top 2 athletes. Is like, hey, we don't have NCAAs, but hey, maybe we can put our names on the record books. We're fit. Let's train for this peak in December. Early December. So as for whether they do it or not, I don't know.
13:25 is the mark.
13:25. As for whether they do it or not, Nico, I'll hedge that they're both likely not to do it because, it's a crazy time. The training's been crazy. Like, it's kind of mentally crazy. Like, there's not a lot of things are just scrambled up with that way you approach a year with the typical peaks and valleys of training, that to just expect perfection in these races of like, hey, all these athletes are just going to come out and they're just going to rip incredible PRs in every single race. There's a lot of factors. There's a lot of mental factors of, are we,
talking down Nico Young. This is not a plot twist I saw coming.
No, I could see Nico go out there and run like 13:35, and it's like that's still an incredible time and a huge PR, and it sets him up well. But like, just to put the pressure of like, yeah, I think the over under is 13:25. That's stupid. The over under should be like 13:35 if I'm a betting man.
Okay, but he can still do it. He can still go sub 13:30, like I said. And for the record, I didn't say he was going to hit it in December. I said he was going to hit it before next July. So if he's under 13:35, I think it bodes incredibly well for what he's going to do next year.
Yeah,
with a full slate of races, because you brought up they did a one-time trial, but he paced it. He didn't even run it all the way through.
Yeah, he did a workout. Yeah.
So I don't even know how sharp he is. But you know what, Nico? Don't listen to Gordon. Let your wings fly out there, man. Go and do it. Deliver it. Okay, 2 more races to talk about here before the NBA season starts. Valencia Marathon, Sunday, December 6th, live on FloTrack, featuring Jordan Hasay, who will be racing her first marathon since the Olympic trials. And look, given the situation in the world right now, who knows when the next chance she will get to run a major marathon. We know all the spring ones have been pushed to the fall. She did not qualify for the Olympics. So this is an opportunity she's going to want to take full advantage of. And I like Hasay in this position because she comes in with virtually very little pressure. This isn't a Boston where she's the featured athlete, Chicago, where all eyes are on her. Her 2:20:57 is the 8th best PR in this entire field. It is that deep. Also in this field is Jocelyn Jepkosgei, who is a New York City Marathon champion. So if you are ranking these by PRs and major accomplishments, Hasay is well down on the list, which I think is a good position to be in after coming off of that high pressure situation from the trials. I don't know how healthy she is, but this is, again, a rare opportunity to compete in a marathon right now. What do you see as her kind of over under for this race in Valencia?
Well, before I get to that, I want to pose a question. So I kind of look at Jordan Hasay and Galen Rupp kind of in the same timeline, right? They both Salazar athletes, both went to Oregon, and both have incredible like media coverage of them compared to their competitors. Like even when they lose, the media asks them about them losing. They don't ask the other person about them winning, right? Because Jordan was doing it in high school, going to the trials. Galen was doing it in high school. Like it was just always about them. And whenever they go to a race, the race doesn't become. It's not the race. It becomes the Jordan Hasay attempt, the Galen Rupp attempt, right?
Yeah.
And I feel like if every time you're racing on U.S. soil, like there's just like so much spotlight, I feel like maybe eventually it can kind of like when you have that constantly, and then you're able to go to a race overseas where you're going to have none of it, where you're just going to be she's just going to be another runner. No one is going to ask her for long interviews. No one is going to put a camera in her face right after she crosses the finish line. She's not going to have to do long press availability, this and the other. I think the reason why Galen Rupp ran his fastest time in Prague, and I think the reason why Jordan is trying to go to Valencia to run this time is I think it's like a way of, escaping the world that they've been in for their entire running career and be able to just only think about running and not have to think about, I am Jordan Hasay. I need to do what people expect Jordan Hasay to do. She could be like, hey, I'm just going for a run. I think Galen, same way. He can just be Galen Rupp and he can just be himself and not have to be the Galen Rupp with the Nike logo and all that good stuff. So I think, like you said, this is a great environment for her to be just away from everything. The same way it was a great environment for Galen. That's where he ran his PR in Prague, overseas. And I think she can run fast. I think she wouldn't do it if she wasn't healthy. She's probably healthy, right? She just ran a half marathon. And yeah, I think she's going to run well. And I think a big factor is she gets to be by herself. I mean, imagine if you're like Justin Bieber and everywhere you go, there's paparazzi taking pictures of the salad that you chose to eat that day. Or if you pick your nose, someone is going to find it, right? And then Justin Bieber probably loves it when he gets to just go to like a foreign country on an island where there's no one knows he's there and you just be like another dude, right? I mean, Dave Chappelle did that. Didn't he like go to Africa for like a year or two where you just be another dude? I feel like these runners just want to be another runner. They don't want to be the poster boy, poster girl. They just want to be another runner. And the only way you can do that is by going to a country that doesn't speak your language and just like hang out, just hide in the pack, cross the finish line and see what happens.
All right. You didn't answer my question, but you did compare Jordan Hasay and Galen Rupp to Justin Bieber. So I will give you a pass on that one. Let's go to the final event that we're going to talk about today, which would just
I think she's going to run well.
2 days. Well, I think the course is fast enough. The only thing that gives me pause is that 74-minute half marathon that she did recently. But we've seen time and time again, sometimes people are just training through those half marathons and they are not indicative of what they can do for the full marathon. I would be surprised if she ran a PR, but I think she can definitely run in the 222 range for sure. Okay, last event. Are you ready for this one? This one is just 2 days before the NBA season kicks off. December 20th, the Marathon Project in Arizona on that loop course is supposed to be fast. This women's field is pretty stacked. You could argue that you have 4 of the top 8 women's marathoners in the country with Sara Hall, Kellen Taylor, Emma Bates, and Steph Bruce. Also in the field is Etsede Baisa of Ethiopia, Rachel Cliff of Canada, Diane Nakuri of the US. And then on the men's side of things, you have 4 men with sub 210 personal bests: Cam Levin, Scott Fauble, Juan Antonio Uribe Marino, and Emmanuel Massel of Eritrea. To me, the most interesting person running in this race, the most interesting storyline is Sara Hall, seeing if she can follow up her London Marathon with another impressive showing.
Yeah, Sara loves to run races. This is what she did last year or 2 years ago, where after running, didn't she run? What did she run after running Berlin? Did she run like 2 marathons, or what was her like crazy schedule? Did she run New York or Chicago?
She ran New York, right? But then she also ran here. I'll look at it right now, pulling up right now. So last year she ran Berlin on September 29th. Well, she ran a 20K on September 2nd. Then she ran the marathon in Berlin on September 29th, 222. Then she ran a road 10 mile. See, road 10 mile is a key, Gordon, in 53:11 on October the 6th. And then she ran New York, which was a DNF, on November the 3rd. So she is racing early and often. Of course, as I mentioned, we just saw her in London on October 4th. So another quick turnaround here. Let's see. What's October 4th to December 20th? How many days is that? October 4th to December 20th days is 77 days apart.
I mean, when did the NBA Finals end?
Is she following the NBA schedule? Is that what you're saying?
The NBA Finals ended October 11th.
Wow.
So basically, she's on the LeBron. She's on the LeBron timeline where you finish the finals and then end of December you start up again. So I think if Sara runs, maybe this is our way to know if Sara runs well. That means the Lakers and Miami are going to have a good season. If Sara doesn't run well, that means the Lakers and Miami are not going to have a good season.
So you said they ended October 11th?
Yeah. But they did play Game 3 on October 4th. They did play Game 3 on October 4th.
So they're going to have a 72-day break. The Lakers are. And Sara Hall is going to have a 77-day break. But I will posit this. Running a marathon, a little bit more taxing than an NBA game. So
what about an NBA series?
Who knew? Well, you're right. That's a little more draining. And especially last year being in the bubble. But I did not expect to draw that parallel there between Sara Hall and LeBron James. And I'm hoping, or she's hoping, that continues, right? Because she did have a LeBron James type performance in London. So her fall was similar to LeBron James's fall. Now we'll see if her winter will be similar to his as well. So I'm excited about seeing what she puts up there. I love it that she's racing so often now. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, and I have no idea what type of times we're going to see. It's just so hard to know, especially like I said during COVID. You just don't know the mentality of these athletes, the training plan, like how much time they take off, this, that, the other thing. It's just so unusual that it's hard to kind of cookie cutter the formula of this will eventually lead to this. It's just so hard to know who's good right now, because people's resumes are so old now, right? It's going to be really hard for when I think about like NCAA projecting and stuff like that.
Mhm.
I'm trying to think about who's going to be good at the NCAA indoor championships. I have no idea because I'm trying to. Am I just going to assume that like the last NCAA champion is currently the favorite? I mean, the last NCAA champion was spring of 2019. So how am I supposed to assume that like the spring of 2019 champion is the favorite in March of 2021? So,
Well, here's the thing too.
yeah,
Here's something that we forget, and I remember this very distinctly because I wrote the women's preview for the indoor meet that didn't happen. That meet was supposed to be about clarifying who some of the top dogs were because there was a lot of big names that were lost to graduation and on the men's sprints as well too. So it was already murky to begin with, and then you don't have the championship, and then you have a year go by, and there's going to be a lot of wild guesses, I think, when it comes to actual projections about who will do well. You brought up one point. We can close on this. You say you don't know, what type of shape people are in, but we do know people are having good years because they've been popping up, they've been racing. Cheptegei breaks world records. Sifan
yeah.
Hassan does well. Carson Warholm, Keira D'Amato, new star, everybody breaking out. I'm waiting for next year to hear from some people who we didn't hear from at all this year, who they show up at a meet and maybe they run well, maybe they don't, but they're like, man, I was in horrible shape last year. I just basically gave up. I ate the entire month of April and most of May, and I'm just glad that they didn't have the Olympics. We don't know who those people are, right? You don't know who they are.
But maybe we'll. But I feel like we're only going to know who those people are if they do well in 2021 because they're not going to want to admit it. It's like it makes them look good if they'd be like, "Yeah, I gained like 40 pounds and now I'm an Olympic champion. Look at me." It's going to be one of those like.
Do you think anybody will just?
They're
disappear?
only going to tell you if they do well.
Do you think anybody will just like we just won't hear from them again? Like 2019 was their last year and they were planning on coming back in 2020, but since it didn't happen, they just sort of fade out.
Maybe that could be like the one go-to question we can ask in the mix zone at the 2021 trials is like ask them about their 2020 habits. Be like, I don't know. First question, how out of shape were you a year ago?
Yeah.
That'd be funny.
How was your race?
We'll get James Cameron to ask that question for us.
I think it's true. I mean, and that's what the funny thing was about those mandatory meets that Nike had people do, because at least they had to show up and put on a uniform and run. But if you're running 11 seconds in 100, they could do that in their sleep. So that doesn't really, I mean, Michael Norman's in shape, but some of those sprinters, they could say, oh, I'm just chilling, but they also could just be in horrible shape. And the 11-second 100 and the 51-second 300 is a good way to hide it. I don't know. It'll be interesting to see.
Well,
we'll leave it there.
Well, Sean Merritt impressed Lincoln enough that he would trade for him right now. It makes no sense at all. You guys got to listen to yesterday's podcast. It was a great pod. One of the best.
It was
definitely in top 10 range.
I was yelling. I wanted to be on it midway through. I was like, why can we not make this the three-person pod? Because you guys are being too nice to each other on these trades. Yeah, Lincoln was accumulating like 2004 All-Stars on his team.
Yeah.
It just made no sense.
Well, maybe we do this. Maybe we do another pod with maybe you and me, and we just do a legit negotiation where we figure out a way that basically you are BYU. We did this before like an NCAA. You're Ed Eyestone and I'm Mike Smith, and we both just have a negotiation to try to make our roster better, and we see who does, and then who ask the fans out. Like who created a better roster.
I do think this though. I do think when it comes to these future scholarship slots, I think you guys were overvaluing those a tad. Because does Mike Smith need more scholarship? Does Mike Smith need more scholarship slots though? Or does Ed Eyestone Ed Eyestone's going to get the best kid at American Fork for now until eternity, right? And Mike Smith's going to always get a guy. Now you could always use another scholarship because maybe you get all of the top 5 of Foot Locker. But I think at a certain point, there's diminishing returns there because people are going to want to go to a place where they can be a star.
Yes, but we wanted to be able to create what would be a first round pick, because it can't just be purely assets. We have to have future assets and
I think
scholarship
cash.
slots.
You
Was
should
my
have thrown cash more in there
cash,
because it's
just
the
like cash
NCAA. You
thrown.
should have thrown a lot of cash. Yeah.
Okay, maybe I'll change it to cash. Yeah, that would be a better idea.
Yeah, I liked the slots that you did when you did the Jerry thing of the future 1500 meter champion, because then it's like solidified in your mind of like, okay,
Yeah,
the next two, we know that they're good, because if you win the NCAA 1500, you have to be pretty good, and then that's value you're getting. But like if he's already getting Nico, it's tough.
yeah.
But yeah, I was laughing hysterically when Lincoln was just piling up all sorts of expiring contracts on his team.
It's like, what's he going?
And he was trading for like Grant Fisher. It's like, I mean, if you're gonna play this game, Gatlin for Grant Fisher, like I don't think either side is making. Yeah, I don't think either side is making that deal, right? Like, what's the?
Yeah.
I don't know. And he was like looking it up too. He's like, hold on, okay, all right. He's like typing into the trade machine, and then he comes back with this magical trade, and it's like,
like LaShawn Merritt, dude. Oh my god. Anyway, listen to the pod. It's a good pod. We simulate NBA trades in the track and field world. So email us, FloTrackPodcasts@gmail.com. Like and subscribe. Should I say that? We're not on YouTube, but just listen to us, watch us, have fun with us.
You can subscribe to the YouTube page. There's a lot of videos going up on our YouTube channel. People could go to that.
Do that. Subscribe to YouTube. All right.
There we go.
We'll talk to you guys tomorrow.
Later.